It is a violent ruffian, a hooligan, a thug, and a close associate of terrorists. This is a quote from Grant's Fishes of Australia, and a pretty serious attack on the character of this fish. Now, having never kept a mangrove jack in an aquarium before, I intend to find out firsthand if the claims made in this book are in fact true. I'm Adam Jones, the Australian aquarist, aquatic explorer and extreme fish keeper. I've dedicated my life to the observation, the pursuit, the collection and the captive care of our cold-blooded Australians. I've had a report of one of Australia's most iconic river monsters living beside the local people in just a few feet of water. So I'm going to swap my usual fins for a fishing rod and head down to the local boat ramp and see if I can fish one of these river monsters out of hiding. Just having a bit of a look around the boat ramp area just to get a bit of an idea of the habitat. Fortunately, the storms last night have really muddied up the water and really made it quite turbid, which might make fishing for a sight predator a little bit difficult. Obviously, the fish needs to see its bait to be able to strike. But I think there's really only one thing left to do, and that is to actually throw a line in the water, get some bait in the water, and see if we have any luck. Because this monster fish is only a baby, I've gone to the local tackle store and picked up some fly fishing hooks. These are the traditional nymph freshwater series fly fishing hooks. I tend to range between a size 14 up to a size 20. In this case, I've got a size 16 and a size 18. So I have to try and adjust which size hook to the size of the fish that I'm targeting. I don't want the bait just to fall into the mud, so I'm going to hook up a bit of a paternoster rig to try and suspend this fly fishing hook and bait off to the side in the water column so it can actually see it. One of the most critical things for me, because I don't like to damage fish, especially trying to remove the hook from their mouth, I like to use these artery forceps. This pair here, well, this pair actually was part of my original veterinary science surgery kit back in the day. I've had it all these years. Righto, so there's no need for any serious tackle here in such shallow water. I've got a very short rod. I'm not going to be casting very far at all. We're dealing with only about 3 foot of water. Got a bit of a variety of bait here. I've got some earthworms from the farm. I thought that might entice this euryhaline fish species out of its hiding. Euryhaline means a fish that can actually inhabit both freshwater and saltwater. I've got some prawn and I've got some tiny live white bait. We might start with a little bit of earthworm and see what kind of luck we have. I'm hoping that little bit of wiggle will actually help entice the fish out of hiding. Right now, I got a sight, I got a visual on him, and I'm just trying to lure him back out of the rock that he's gone under for protection. It seems that he uses the area between the rock over here and underneath this pylon to actually provide cover for when he's actually swimming around and hunting. Ooh, he's very shy, very shy, very shy. I wonder if that hook is just a bit too big. I think I might actually try a size 18 hook, which is one size smaller. I'm not sure my old eyes are going to be able to handle this. Come on, you can see it. So shy. Come on. Tide's going out and the water's getting lower and lower. Got him. Fish on. Fish on. Fish on. Fish on. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. This is a juvenile mangrove jack. What I've got to do now is get him off this tiny hook. There we go. Look at that. Look at this little legend. They're actually really pretty little fish. Got him. Got him. A lovely little juvenile mangrove jack. Get him back home and we'll have a good discussion about mangrove jacks in the aquarium. Let's go. Two things. One, I make sure that there is plenty of water inside of the bucket because I don't want the water sloshing around inside the bucket and therefore potentially damaging the fish. The other thing I do is I always carry one of these. These are the 12-volt cigarette lighter style battery air pump. I plug it into my cigarette lighter, I pop the air stone into the bucket, and that just maintains some water movement, some circulation, and some air exchange. So one of the steps I take when I'm acclimating my new fish is to actually do a freshwater dip. That's to help knock off any external parasites, in particular flukes. It's not going to help knock off or eradicate any ick or velvet. It can help to alleviate it if they have an active infection, but it's more to actually remove the external flukes. Freshwater dip, I try and match the temperature. I'm not too worried about the pH and about the alkalinity. Probably ideal, but in my experience hasn't been necessary. And no more than 5 minutes. I tend to aim for about 3 or 4 minutes. I don't expect there to be a problem with this mangrove jack, considering that it is a euryhaline fish, which means it's a fish species which can live in the range of salinities between freshwater and full marine, and certainly within that brackish range also. It tends to do so according to its stage of life. So as a juvenile fish, it tends to work its way back up the creeks and rivers into freshwater, and then as it's growing and getting larger and larger, it heads back down towards the river mouths into full strength saltwater, and eventually head out to the reefs offshore. It's important to make sure that your fish in freshwater continues moving. You don't want to see it lie down and stop moving, which might impair its ability to breathe properly. You will often find, I especially find fish such as butterfly fish and some surgeon fish will often lie down on the bottom of the actual freshwater bucket and just look like they're dead. In those cases, I've actually run an air stone to make sure it tends to keep them moving, but you can also just as easily just hurry them along a little bit, just like that. You can see this guy's actually tolerating this freshwater dip very nicely. So the mangrove jack is one of the largest members of a group of tropical snappers in the family Legenidae and the genus Lejanus. Growing to a size of about 1 metre or roughly 3 foot in length and armed with the prominent canine teeth, which are the trademark of the family, it's easy to see why the mangrove jack is such a popular target for fishermen all across the top half of Australia. But as we know, I am the Australian aquarist, not the Australian angler. So what interest do I have in keeping a mangrove jack in one of my aquariums? I do have a couple of questions here. The first is from Sav1671, Sav, I hope I got that right, who asks, what is my water change routine? You can see I do have some large tanks. This tank over behind me, which is my Palau reef tank, is going on about 4,000 litres. And this tank over here, which is my Gold Coast Seaway aquarium, is going on 2,000 litres. And got some work going on over behind me here, but we will also have a 600 litre planted marine aquarium coming in. So with all that salt water required to be changed, what is my water change routine? And that is simply, I use natural seawater. I certainly could not afford to use artificial seawater. I haven't got it set up at the moment, but I back my van in here with one of those 1,000 litre IBCs in the back. I pump the water straight out of there through a blue pool hose and straight into the aquariums. One thing I will show you is I always install a bulkhead with a valve to a drain exactly 1,000 litres down from the running surface, which is that one back there, 1,000 litres down from the running surface of the aquarium. And that way I can actually open that valve, dump 1,000 litres out, and then pump 1,000 litres of fresh ocean water back into the tanks. So thank you, Sav1671. And from Audio Manmic, I think I got that right, asks if I run a UV sterilizer. Now my Gold Coast Seaway aquarium at the moment does not have a UV sterilizer actively running, and I'm not running one outside of my turtle tank, but I am running one on Palau Reef. Let me show you. So tucked around the corner just here, try and squeeze past, is this UV sterilizer. It's a Pentair unit. It stands roughly 1.5 meters high. It's a 120 watt UV sterilizer, and I have it tuned with that valve. I've measured that one to be correct for the size of the unit. It's being supplied water via this Laguna 15,000 litre AC pump, which is directly plumbed in a bit of a closed loop to maximise the efficiency of the UV steriliser. Working nicely, yes it is. Now, one thing I will say, if you're in Australia, you can't see this label anymore. Now, I bought this UV steriliser from Fresh by Design, which is a aquaculture retail group down in just south of Sydney. And one thing I will say, I'm not sponsored by Fresh by Design, but they've helped me out quite a number of times. I've had 3 episodes of broken UV replacement lamps and also quartz sleeves in the delivery, or the post, not really the post, but anyway. And they've actually replaced and resent them out 3 times without question, and they've been fantastic service. So if you're in Australia, have a consider supporting Fresh by Design. Really great service. For the lovers of monster fish in Australia, the Mangrove Jack is high on the list of must-haves. It's often kept with species such as the Saratoga, the Jardini, the sooty grunter, the jungle perch, and the eel-tail catfish. But it's its reputation for aggression, which seems to make people want to keep them as some sort of strange narcissistic status symbol. A look what I've got in my lounge room kind of a situation. And from what I've seen on YouTube, there does also seem to be a sort of an unfortunate link between those videos and the feeding of excessively large feeder fish, a habit which I find to be quite ugly. So, as a sort of a silent, stubborn protest to this ugly side of the hobby, I've never desired to keep a mangrove jack in one of my aquariums. But all that changes today, because I'm a strong believer in only making comment when you have first-hand experience. So I set up my drip acclimation process. I discarded most of the water that came in this original bucket, and I've just put some of it into the bottom of this larger bucket, with the water flowing down from the aquarium in this 4mm airline tube with, I would say, not exactly a drip, but certainly a steady stream. I think that'll take probably about 10 minutes for that bucket to fill up. When that occurs, I feel very comfortable releasing the Mangrove Jack into my Gold Coast Seaway aquarium. My plan for keeping this Mangrove Jack in my aquarium is a simple one, but it does differ from what seems most aquarists do. Number one, I caught this Mangrove Jack in full strength salt sea water, and that's the way I intend to keep it for all of its life. It seems that most people that keep mangrove jacks do so in freshwater aquariums. And of course, being a euryhaline fish, the mangrove jack is quite capable of living in both conditions. But naturally, the mangrove jack, once it reaches a size beyond 50 centimetres, makes its way from the freshwater reaches of rivers down to the brackish conditions of the estuaries, past the mangroves, out of the river mouth into the full strength seawater of the ocean. Now, I've got a little bit of a whimsical theory, you might say, and that is that one of the reasons why mangrove jacks are so irritable in freshwater aquaria is because they've been physiologically denied the ability to grow up into full strength seawater. My observations of mangrove jacks in nature are of a very gregarious fish, and I usually see them hanging out in large groups by rocky structure. Not only that, I also find them in the presence of a great variety of other fish species, such as fingermark snapper, yellowfin brim, mullet, large sturgeon fish, and moon wrasse. So I intend to keep this mangrove jack as part of a bustling community tank. To me, it only makes sense that a mangrove jack that's kept singular and alone in a glass box is going to react violently to the addition of either a potential companion or a feeder fish, simply either from a food response or a territorial threat. I will not be feeding live fish to this aquarium, and in particular to the Mangrove Jack. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not against the feeding of live feeder fish per se. And in fact, I've had to use live bait and live tiny mullet and shrimp to induce a feeding response in my group of old wives and early on in my silver trevally. In fact, the feeding of live prey is a fantastic nutritional source for your fish, because not only is it the nutrition from the prey's body, it's also the nutrition derived from the prey's gut contents. The enzymes contained within those gut contents also offer, well, in my mind, a form of natural probiotic. But what I am against is seeing people feed oversized live fish, live amphibians, and live rodents to their fish to gain some sort of morbid, gleeful excitement from seeing their predatory pet be forced to tear apart that oversized food item. It's particularly that part of that side of the hobby which I've reviled against for quite some time. And I think you all know the kind of videos I'm talking about on YouTube. I'm a big believer in respect for the fish that we keep in our aquariums and the fish that we may feed to our pets. So by sticking to a diet of pellets, such as the ones here from Frenzy Fish Feeds, but also some good quality chopped seafood, I hope to see my juvenile Mangrove Jack maturing nicely in my Gold Coast Seaway aquarium amongst a great variety of other fish species, and do so rather peacefully and contently. So for now, I think it's time that we let this little guy settle in. He's been very timid since I introduced him into the aquarium. He's decided to take up residence up behind some of those oysters up near the top of the pipe. I do find that my snappers in general tend to be quite reclusive and timid fish. You can see the reaction from my one spot snapper or finger mark snapper and my 5-line snapper from just having the presence of me in the tank. Not me in the tank. Having the presence from me sitting in front of the tank. These guys usually aren't too bad, but a bit of commotion and they'll just dart away. So I think it will take some time for my young Jack resident to settle in. One thing I'd like to know is if you've kept a Mangrove Jack in a saltwater aquarium, please reach out to me. Please put a comment down below and let me know what your experiences were. I do know I am familiar with lots of experiences from Jacks in freshwater aquariums, but I'd love to hear from others that have kept Mangrove Jacks in a saltwater aquarium. Particularly if there was any influence on the robustness or the health of the fish, but also their ability or their desire to cohabit with other fish. If you've got this far in the video, then you must have enjoyed it. And there's one thing I would really appreciate, and that would be, if you're on your iPhone, just give it a like. If you've enjoyed it, give it a like. That will help me out immensely. And if you happen to be watching this video on your television set, much like I do, then go and consider watching another one of my videos. I've got the playlist just up here for the build of this Gold Coast Seaway Aquaria, and I think you'll find plenty of good viewing just up there. Thanks very much. I'm Adam, the Australian Aquarist. Over and out.